Okay. 1, 2, I hope you're getting me. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2.
Okay, I got you, but it's kind of loud.
Kind of.
Is it loud?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
It's low here. Are you getting
Hold on
it
1
now?
second, 1 second.
1, 2.
You are getting it?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
It's mono.
1, 2.
Yeah, we'll
Test.
I'll try and
1, 2, 3, 4.
if we can.
Save the whales. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Check. 7, 8, 6, 3, 9, 1. 391. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Test. Mic check.
What was your first car?
I'm sorry?
What was your first car?
It was a Ford Galaxy 500. No, it wasn't a Galaxy. It was a Fairlane 500.
Fairlane, oh yeah.
But
You have a Fairlane convertible in our shop.
yeah, this was it was a 63. But it was in the 70s when I got it, I think.
What was one thing that you missed about it?
I've never given that car a second thought.
Really?
No. Well, I mean, I was 15, and it was just the independence and greatness of having your own way about things.
Yeah.
I had a 64 Impala, and I'd kind of like to have that again.
Yeah.
But
Would that be your favorite car that you have?
I think so, of my kid cars. Not the best one. My best one was a 66, and it just drove well, and it felt good for the time.
Of course.
Yeah, for the time, but
Look at you. It sounds like you're a Chevy guy. Through and through, huh?
no, my first two cars were Fords.
Yeah.
I leaned towards Chevys, but I worked for a mechanic out of high school, and he was a Chevy man.
Yeah.
And so there was some obligatory Ford bashing. But he said, you notice that when we get more Chevys in than we do Fords to fix. He says, but the problem is the Fords stay longer because they're harder to get parts for. The GM stuff was all interchangeable. And it's like we actually work on more Chevys or GM stuff. But I lean towards that. I don't have anything against Ford. I mean, at the time, it was, yeah, I mean, there are people that are passionate one way or another.
Nowadays, it's all just the universal unibodies.
Yeah.
Everybody has the same car and made by the same people.
At that time, Chrysler and Dodge were kind of these tinny, crappy, but they have a better name now than they did at that time. So we had this guy, and back in the 70s, the cars were big. They're ships, land yachts. But guy showed up with these. I want to tune up my car, but I can't get this back spark plug out. How are you supposed to do that? He says, oh yeah, you got to loosen the motor mounts, lift the engine up, and then you. It's like because
The Subarus with the boxer engines, they're totally like vertical. So they're right up against the wheel arms. They even tell you have to drop the engine to change the spark plug.
yeah. Well, they're designed to go together at the factory.
Yes.
So, I mean, if the engine is here, then it goes up into the bottom. They don't care about what's accessible from the top. But I haven't felt like I wanted to work on a car in a long time because they're all computer.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yep, that's all it is. Which I hate because I have just enough computer issues that I don't.
Okay, I think we're all good.
Okay.
Unless you need.
Just keep talking.
Oh, okay. I'll keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen texts, that
1,
come out
2.
all the time that,
Test
you
1,
used to
2.
buy just a toolbox with tools.
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing that you buy.
That's right.
Snap-on scanner. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Can I turn this off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Watch your step. Hello, everybody. If we could all take a seat, we're going to get started. Hello, hello. Thank you. One person said hello back. Hello, hello, hello. Show of hands. My job is, well, that was quick. Okay. Show of hands. Who has been to the museum before tonight? Thank you. Who has not been here since their prom? Tell the truth, there's always one. Third grade field trip? No? Okay. Well, my name is Phil McDougall. I'm the president of the National Automobile Museum, and if you haven't been here in a while, we have really changed things up. But my job here tonight is just to welcome you and say thank you to the Indy for their partnership, and remind you that if you haven't been here for a while, though, please come back because there's 240 automobiles, and we just put in over $4 million of money into this museum to make it look good. So our board has put that money up to community, including a brand new outdoor patio, 16,000 square foot facility, bar, fire pits, and a new children's educational activity center. So if you have time afterwards, I encourage you to walk around. But my job is short here tonight. My job was just to get your attention, and that was really quick, so thank you very much. Thank you for saying yes in the beginning, give me the hoo-ah. Again, I'm going to do my best to make it really short. The real honor is mine by having a partnership with the Indy. But my job here is to introduce Michelle. Michelle, could you come out? Michelle Rindels. She's a co-editor at the Indy. Give her a big hand. And she's going to start the night off. Thank you, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. We want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm Michelle Rindels. I'm one of the co-editors here at the Nevada Independent. My other co-editor is the incomparable Riley Snyder, my amazing husband, who couldn't be here tonight. He is putting the two kids to bed. So we appreciate all he does for our future Nevadans. I was recently reading a book about focus, and one of the amazing things I took away from that is that the average person is exposed to so much information on a single day. It's equivalent to 174 newspapers worth of information on a daily basis. So we are honored when you take the time to turn your attention to the Nevada Independent and try to become more informed about the issues that are really going to affect your community. And honestly, at a scope that's going to, you can make a difference here in Nevada. That's one of the things I love about this state is it's small enough that you can actually make a difference. Here at the Nevada Independent, we want to make each one of those stories that you read worth the time that you spent reading them. We strive each day to make our coverage meaningful. We want you to leave informed. We want you to leave with the full picture. We want to cut out the fluff and just give you that important stuff you need to be an informed citizen. Another thing from that focus book was it's going to take citizens being focused on the problems that face our community and engaged with those to ever truly make a difference over the long run. And I know that those of you in the community of legislators and who've been through sessions know it takes effort over years. It takes a lot of attention, a lot of focus to change the things in our state. We're super excited that you're here to learn from our legislators at a very crucial time in the session. I'm amazed that they were all able to make it. Here we are like 3 weeks before the end of the session to answer questions at a pivotal time where they are going to be in these final negotiations that mean so much and will affect us for years to come. So with that, I want to welcome our amazing founder and CEO, John Ralston, to open our conversation tonight, and hope you leave informed, enlightened, and empowered to make changes in this Nevada we all know and love.
How many of you are here to listen to this enlightened conversation, and how many of you are lobbyists just to be seen by the legislators? So I just want to say about Michelle and her husband Riley, who have been co-editors now since the beginning of the year. I couldn't be prouder of them stepping up into roles of leadership and really being the faces of the Indy now. I'm going to try to fade into the background as much as I can. It's not my biggest strength, but I'm going to give it a shot. I do want to repeat that we are really, really thankful that all of these legislators agreed to come and do this. I want to say that especially to Senator Steinbeck, who's filling in for Dr. Titus, who had a last-minute personal family emergency. So thank you for coming, and we'll introduce all of them in just a second. This is one of many events that we've done. Many of you have been to multiple events that we put on. We want to have a conversation that is elevated and enlightening. We don't want to just make it like some old TV show like Face to Face or something like that, that it's all confrontational. We want to have a conversation with these legislators, and we're going to do our best to get them to make news tonight. And I guess I should tell you that they can't leave until they do make news. So we might be here a while. This has been a labor of love for me since we started the Indy on January 17th of 2017. I can't believe it's been more than eight years. I am so proud of the staff that we have and the remarkable people that have helped us grow from 6 people on the night that we sat around a table in Carson City to the 20-plus employees that we have now. And I am really, I had the vision to start it, but it would not have lasted as long without the remarkable people that have come our way. And so nonprofit journalism only survives with people like you supporting us. So I hope that in addition to buying a ticket, that many of you are actual donors, and if you're not, we will find you. And tell your friends, tell, especially if they're rich friends, that we need help to become sustainable over the long term. We are doing better than we ever have before, but we still need help from the community, and we are all about helping the community. I want to, before I turn it over to the bureau chief, I want to thank our sponsors. We couldn't do this without our sponsors as well. Let me just read them real quickly. Of course, Phil and the National Automobile Museum have been great partners in this. Give Phil a round of applause, please. But there are other companies that have sponsored this too, and I want to tell you who they are real quickly. We're getting more and more sponsors for every event, so it takes longer to read this, which is a real pleasure. Nevada Mining Association, Google, Core Construction, the Raiders, Western States Petroleum Association, EDON, Kempfer Kroll, Lyft, Ormet Technologies, the Building and Construction Trades Council of Northern Nevada, and the Reno and Sparks Chamber. Please give a round of applause to all the sponsors of this event. So, I just want to say again, what a unique opportunity. I've covered every legislative session since, I hate to date myself, 1987. There has never been a situation this late in the session, just a few weeks from the end, where you have all of the legislative leaders, and you're a proxy here, Senator Steinbeck, so you're a legislative leader tonight. I hate to do that to you. And so I really feel honored that they were willing to do this and to have a conversation. And I want to turn it over to our Carson City Bureau Chief, Tabitha Mueller, who has been the leader of a 3-person team in Carson City. She's doing a phenomenal job. No one I know works harder, and she has developed the sources, and I'm sure that they all have different nicknames for her, that like Pest and it's her again when she comes knocking. So please give a round of applause to Tabitha, and we're going to get it started.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we'll get started with questions. Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro, thank you for being here. Assembly Speaker Steve Yeager. As a proxy, Senator John Steinbeck, and Assembly Minority Leader Greg Hafen. So please, everyone, thank you so much for being here, and I'm really excited. I wanted to start the conversation with a topic that is on everyone's mind, regardless of where they're from as part of industry, the budget. Obviously, we're seeing a shortfall in projected budgets of $191 million from the Economic Forum, and then there's also that projected shortfall from the Education State Fund of about $160 million, about roughly $350 million in total. I'm curious to know from your perspectives, how bad is it actually, especially now with budget closings sort of moving forward, and feel free to, whoever wants to take that one to start.
So I guess I'll start, and thank you for having us. I've enjoyed these talks in the past, and I think they're helpful to give some insight to what we're doing in Carson City. So thank you, John, for having us, and thank you, Tabitha. I would first start with saying that the shortfall that we're seeing in general fund revenues from the Economic Forum and the shortfall that we're seeing in the education account are absolutely and unequivocally a direct result of chaos that we're seeing in Washington. The trade wars that we are starting, the tariff wars that we are starting is creating uncertainty. The thing that I think Nevada does least well with is uncertainty, because so much of our revenues rely upon us being a tourism destination. And when people feel uncertain about their economic future, they're less likely to spend discretionary income. They're less likely to plan that trip. When people feel less like coming to Nevada or coming to the United States, we see a decrease in our conventions, and a decrease in that tourism directly corresponds with us losing those revenue bases. Those numbers are real. Those are real things that we have to then take into consideration. And I think part of the difficulty that we've had with trying to manage those projected shortfalls in revenue also comes from the fact that we received a budget that we had to immediately sort of come forward and say, look, this budget is structurally deficient, is not balanced. We have to fix that. We needed to get a whole bunch of amendments because that budget was mismanaged and didn't come to us in a way that we could have just sort of approved it as a legislative body. And so we did see that, right? We saw a lot of amendments come from the governor's office. The revenue projections obviously are a concern, but our money committees have been doing a lot of work to try to manage that budget. We closed our last budgets late last night. And so I think we've done a good job of trying to manage all of that, but I don't think that that should take away from the reasons why we're seeing those shortfalls, or how difficult that really is for money committees when we're trying to just basically keep all of the programs and services that we currently have in the state.
And I have some follow-up questions, but Assembly Minority Leader, is that how you see it too?
Well, I just want to give a little bit of different perspective. So the question was projected shortfalls, which I think is important to note that even though the projections are now different, the state is still growing. It's just growing at a smaller rate. We're growing at, I believe, 0.6%, which has made the projections lower than what they were in December, but the state is still growing. And I do have to commend my colleagues, both sides of the House. We have worked tirelessly to ensure that the state is in the position where we can balance the budget, and 99% of it we've all been in agreements with a couple of discrepancies here and there, but we're working through it. We have always been in a great financial position with a balanced budget, and right now we have the largest rainy day fund in state's history, as well as a very healthy education stabilization account.
And Speaker, I know that you might have some thoughts on this as well. Is there anything that Senator Cannizzaro didn't discuss that you think is important to bring forward on this?
Well, I mean, if the Nevada economy is the patient, Trump is the pre-existing condition. We know that. I mean, this is federal chaos, and with all due respect to Leader Hafen, this isn't just about slow growth. I mean, this is devastation. You want to talk about where Nevada is right now. Our employment is the lowest in the country. Our tourism is down. Our revenue is down, but yet denial is as high as it's ever been. Like, I don't know how you look at this budget and you don't see that it's not just about today, it's about the next biennium. And all of you know this. I mean, sure, you don't deal with budgets maybe in the multi-billions of dollars that we deal with, but imagine if you're trying to budget for your household. And you're at the end of this cycle, you're trying to project for 2 years, because remember, we have to project for 2 years in this economic climate with this uncertainty. And all of a sudden, because of factors out of your control, external factors, you're told you've got to shave whatever percentage it is off of that budget. Those are real decisions, right? You have to think about, what in my household am I going to cut? What am I not going to be able to do next year? What am I not going to be able to provide for my family? That's the situation we're in, right? Not only have we had to say no to all kinds of really good programs, But we've had to look at this budget and say, what is sustainable in the long run? And all of you that have worked in state government in this state know we are one of the leanest states in the country when it comes to services. We depend so heavily on our nonprofit sectors to step in and carry the load. And so every single decision we have to make that is a result of external factors is a painful one. And we've been here since 2017, I think 2019. I've never had a time when the Economic Forum came back in May and projected less revenue. Now, yes, we lived through COVID. That was terrible to live through. But when we were in COVID, you know what happened? The federal government stepped in and helped. Here, the federal government is actively hurting the state. There is nobody who has money that can come in and help us. We don't have a printing press in the basement of the building. So I would just say, I would love to give you great news, but I'm looking at the weather forecast and I only see storm clouds, and I think that's going to be a real disaster for the state in the long run.
So let me jump in here for a second, and I knew I'd do this eventually, Chief, but this guy's on fire. You might have to put him out. How many of those lines did you practice before you got here to speak?
None of them.
None of them? Okay.
None of them.
So you mentioned the federal funds, and I do want to talk about it, because maybe you guys, I mean, you got all this ARPA money as a result of what happened with the pandemic. Maybe you shouldn't have spent like drunken sailors, and you wouldn't be in the position you're in now.
So I guess what I have to maybe disagree with on that is that,
I'm shocked.
you know, we as a, I know. But I mean, look, we as a state received a large portion of ARPA dollars, which we used to help to, I think, mitigate against some of the issues that we saw as a result of COVID, right? We put more money into educational programs to help kids with learning loss. We put money into different healthcare programs to make sure that people were able to access healthcare. Those monies that we received are not monies that we received, and if you don't spend them, you get to keep them, or if you invest them, you do something different with them. Those are monies that we receive as a state as one-time funds that we have to either put into programs to help mitigate against the effects of the COVID pandemic, or we have to send them back to the federal government. And so it wasn't a matter of trying to just spend like drunken sailors. It was a matter of taking those funds and trying to find what the very best uses were for those. And I think you saw a lot of that work being done not only in the last legislative session, but also in the interim through IFC and through work programs that were proposed by both Governor Sisolak and then work programs that we've seen from Governor Lombardo. Right? We've had to work together with the executive to figure out how it is that we put these dollars to the best use to make sure that Nevadans are able to recover from the pandemic. And one of the things that I think we should always keep in mind is that Nevada is particularly hard hit in economic downturns, and we are often the slowest state to sort of revive, right? And so the effects of the COVID pandemic were particularly hurtful for Nevada. And I think that we did a very good job, and I would stand by that, of utilizing those ARPA dollars in a way that was responsible, in a way that was designed to infuse additional support for one-time things that we know we could do, or to infuse support where we knew that there were other wraparound services that Nevadans needed.
So you were sober sailors, as your.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't a matter of we asked the federal government for X amount of dollars.
Let me have my throwaway lines and we'll move
Yeah.
on. Senator Steinbeck, I just want to bring him into this.
Yeah.
And from this perspective, you're the newbie here. You came from being a fire chief. You dealt a little bit with budgets, didn't you?
Yes.
So how would you describe how different the budgeting process is in the state legislature from the budgeting process that you're familiar with?
Night and day.
Night and day.
Yeah, for sure. But there's just a lot more decision makers, right, at this level. And I want to thank both of you as well, and my colleagues here, and for all the assistance that they've given me as a new senator. But it is definitely different. But we knew that we were going to have a leaner year earlier on, that there wasn't going to be the money from ARPA, which, you know, if we're talking about national policies that have affected tourism, I think that's a big one of them, right? You had a lot of artificial money that was being put out across the nation, that was being printed. It pushed up a lot of inflation, and now that's going to be felt for a little while. You can't continue to do that forever. And so I think that that's part of what we're going to feel. and we're going to go right through it. I mean, this state knows its way through this. We have a great leader in Governor Lombardo, and we're going to go ahead and knock through that right away. Yes, right away with the legislation that I proposed, that other people have proposed, right away the first discussion is, does it have a fiscal note? If it has a fiscal note, let's look at it again. Let's talk about it again. And that's been something that leadership has certainly expressed, and that's been very easy to fall in line with.
I wanted to follow up on something that you mentioned earlier, which is the state's rainy day fund. Assembly Minority Leader, do you think that we should be using the state's rainy day fund and tapping into that?
No, I don't think that there's a need. I think that we have a budget right now that's very, very close. And what I would note is that we're actually at the cap of the rainy day fund right now. And I know that there has been side conversations of, okay, we're at the cap. It's fully funded right now. There's some provisions in there that would allow additional money to go in. Do we want that additional money to go in, or do we need those funds during this biennium rather than adding to the already capped out rainy day fund?
Do you agree, Assembly Speaker?
It's raining. It's raining outside right now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, the state's in a bad way right now, but the question I think for us is, the question is how bad is it going to get? And when I look at the forecast, I see more Trump tornadoes, Musk monsoons. This is going to get worse. It's going to get way worse. And I mean that seriously. Like, we're going to be back here in September or October, and we're going to be having we're going to have to cut programs because we're not going to have the money. So I agree with Assemblymember Hafen in the sense that we have to be very responsible about this because, we can't drain that rainy day fund. There are some who have asked us to drain the rainy day fund, all of it, this session. I think that would be irresponsible. We're going to be back in a special session unless there's some kind of dramatic course correction at the federal level, which I don't see happening. So it's probably not the time to do that, but I would just caution that it really is raining. I mean, and John, I want to mention one more thing we talked about a little bit, but it's not just the state revenues. The Economic Forum forecasts the state revenues, but the local revenues fund education, and that goes into our people-centered funding formula. So when you saw that number out of the Economic Forum, 191 million, it's not really that, it's 160 million more because that's what we're losing for education. So it's a two-factor. We're having the state revenues go down and the local revenues go down, but that local revenue really hurts education. So, if that continues, we're going to come back in September, October, and it's going to be a giant budget hole, and it's not just going to be the state side, it's going to be the education and public safety support that local money goes to. So I appreciate the optimism. I'm not optimistic. I just think we're at a time where the economic uncertainty is so great. People are not traveling. People don't want to spend money. There's uncertainty, and that always, always, always impacts tourism and impacts Nevada worse than any other state.
But isn't there is a middle ground between, as you put it, draining the rainy day fund and taking some money out of it. I mean, if it's raining, and it's clearly raining, right? I mean, the Economic Forum
the last time that they projected an economic decrease was 2009, right after the housing market crash.
Why is there such opposition? I mean, isn't that what it's there for? Why is there such opposition to touching any part of it?
Because there's nothing that indicates we're going to go the other direction anytime soon.
And I think the other part of that too is, right, that is one-time funding. That rainy day fund doesn't just replenish itself if you take money out of it. That is one-time funding that we can use to fill whatever that hole is. And so I think that also plays into the idea of whether or not it is prudent to take money out of that fund.
So what does that mean? When do we tap into it? If not now, when?
I think part of that goes back to the first question you asked, which is, what are we doing with the budget? I think we've done a good job of managing what we were handed. There were also other unexpected costs this fiscal year, which you've seen us talk about in all of our different hearings in the money committees. Overtime increases to the tune of $42 million for a miscalculation for Medicaid that actually cost us $66 million more. More money for wildfire suppression dollars and recovery accounts. Over $100 million that we have to find in this fiscal year, which has ramifications through the rest of the biennia. And you've seen that too, even within the education funding account, that we have had to utilize some of the education stabilization account dollars to fill those holes in this fiscal year for shortfalls in revenue collections, and then also to help cover the costs going into the next biennium to make sure that education funding stays whole. And so we are trying to be very, I think, smart about how it is and when it is we tap into that, and not tapping into that when we can sort of manage it on the budget policy side, which I think you've seen the money committees try to do.
And speaking, sorry.
And Tabitha, I just wanted to add to that. Your question was, when should we tap into the rainy day fund? I think the example that we all sat through, and Chief was dealing with it down south, is during the pandemic. And that is the example of when we should tap into the rainy day fund, is when those kinds of serious, whether it's a pandemic or a recession that comes to us, that's when we should tap into those funds, because we never know what it is. I mean, the economy is cyclical. I think if you looked at the stock market this morning, it's up, right? There's now a trade pause with China, and the markets have actually gone, I think they're up 8% this month. And so we're starting to turn the corner and see the economy turning around federally, and I guess I am the optimist here. I have faith that we're going to start seeing that in the state of Nevada, but at the same time, we have to be fiscally responsible, because we never know what tomorrow would bring, and that is exactly why the rainy day fund is there.
So, I hate to be a contrarian here to what you just said, sir, but have you seen the studies that show that even under the current tariffs, that the average family in America is going to pay $2,800 more? And I know that, you have to do your I love Trump and I love the governor stuff. That's fine. That's fine. We understand that. But do you really think the economy is turning around? And the old joke about, if the national economy sneezes, Nevada catches a cold. All that's true, because legislators who have been around a while have not broadened the tax base. So I don't know where your optimism is coming from.
So where my optimism is coming from is we were experiencing double-digit inflation. That has now stopped. We're at 2-point-something% now. So the inflation has stopped down. Are people paying more today than they were 4 years ago? Absolutely they are, because we had infusions of COVID ARPA dollars that caused a lot of inflation. And, myself, some of my colleagues, some of the former legislators are here, were concerned that we were going to see a fiscal cliff and the federal dollars were going to run out. And then we would be sitting here today, like we are, saying, hey guys, the projections are going down. The good news is the state is still growing. The bad news is we don't have as much as we thought we were going to have back in December.
I guess I take issue with the continued notion that this is because of ARPA dollars, and that there is not some other really destabilizing actions being taken in Washington that are having a direct result on our revenue projections. Because if it was just ARPA dollars and that ARPA dollars are leaving, that has always been the case. That would have been the case in December. That would have been reflected in the economic forum numbers in December, because those monies always had a finite period of time to not only be allocated, but then also to be spent. And so if this was a direct result of just ARPA dollars and the fact that we might be losing them, then we would have seen this in December. But since December, I think the projections, and if you talk to local governments, we've heard it all session long, if you're talking to our major industries, they are talking about seeing immediate effects of the chaos that is happening in Washington. And failure to recognize that as a huge part of this problem and contributing it just to ARPA dollars is trying to turn a blind eye to the realities of what is happening. This is a direct result of ongoing trade wars, of uncertainty over tariffs, of people not sure what those costs are going to be, of us seeing the effects of that. Nevada is going to be particularly sensitive to that, and that is the reason. And if you watch the Economic Forum, they 100% unequivocally talked about how their projections for decrease in sales tax, their projections for decreased gaming revenues is coming directly because of policies in Washington, not because of ARPA dollars. And I think to keep characterizing it as that, I think is setting us up for a bad reality check when it comes time for us to really face that fact, because when Nevada starts to see a decrease like that, it's going to take us a long time to recover.
It is clear, and this is true of the Economic Forum, and I will admit that I did not watch the whole Economic Forum because, I have a life, but the bottom, or I should say I have people for that, but...
You do, we watched it.
The the bottom line is the economic forum did say what the senator said, which is, you can't ignore it. You go to war with Canada, people stop coming from Canada, and 27% or something of our visitors come from Canada. It's had an effect. Gaming and sales tax revenue drive everything in this state. You can talk about the other components, but I guess if I can't have it before we move on to the two Democratic leaders to tell us exactly what their wonderful meetings with the governor have been like, which is next. I guess I wonder if you're, having come from a kind of a nonpartisan arena, you're a fire chief. It's very simple compared to the nuances of politics, right? Does it distress you that it looks like what's happening early on in this discussion, on this stage, is finger pointing by both sides? I'm not going to say who's right, who's wrong, but it's Trump's fault, it's trade war's fault, and he's referring back to Biden very cleverly with the 4 years ago and all that stuff. Does that bother you? I mean, you've been up here now for a while. It seems like Carson City has become much more like Washington than it used to be.
Yeah, I think during some discussions, it does get like that, and it does bother me. I don't like that, of course. I think a lot of people don't. I think it's fine to talk about what we think the issues are, or what leadership is doing. But most of the discussions that we normally have is what can we do right now with what we have in this building, make the best decisions for Nevada. And that's where I
You think everyone thinks like you like that? Like, what universe are you living in? Like, do they?
The little firehouse that I was in. The little firehouse that
I want to
was in.
live there. I want to live there.
Because no matter, the people elect the president, the country elected the president and the members of Congress and the Senate, and our responsibility is in the legislature. And so I've always just tried to control what I can control. And right now, this is the money that we have right now to work with. I think that we're going to do great moving forward, but I am a very optimistic person. Obviously there's some opinion that we're going to decline a little bit more. That's great. Let's, we need to have those open discussions. I just never want to get to the real, national partisanship, and so far I haven't.
We'll get into some of the federal stuff a little bit later too. I know that we have some questions on that, but I do want to talk about dynamics and interactions with the governor's office. So I actually wanted to start with a quick poll. On a scale of 1 to 10, how engaged has the governor been with the legislative process?
Is 1 good or bad?
1 is bad, 10 is good. Sorry, I should have clarified that.
It's a one-word answer. I know it's difficult for all of you, but go ahead and try it.
It's changed over time. I mean, it's changed over time. I think.
Well, let's say temperature check right now.
Oh, right now I would say it's probably at an 8 or 9. I mean, we're 3 weeks to go. It's go time. We've got to figure this out. It didn't start out that way, though. I think there was not a lot of communication after the state of the state, and I think there were some ill feelings about the budget that came over, about some of the things that were said in the state of the state. But you do the work, you move on, and I think we're at a really good place right now, having very productive discussions, and we have to do that. There's no way we get out of the session otherwise.
Senators? Senator and Assembly
Oh, I got upgraded to a senator now, okay.
Sorry.
I just got appointed to
Is that
senator.
an upgrade?
Downgraded.
Is that an upgrade?
Downgraded.
Oh, it's a downgrade. I go to the second floor from the third floor. Got it. So what I would say is the governor has opened up the communication.
You got to give me a number. I asked for a
I
number.
can't give you a number. I'll agree with, how about this? I'll agree with the speaker. Here, well, John, I'll agree with the speaker. What'd you say, 8 or 9? 8 or 9 and right now? He is very engaged. Since day one, his lines of communication have been open. And his approach was, hey, you guys are the legislators. You guys have your job to do. I'm not going to interfere with your day-to-day actions and tell us, what we should be doing. He wants us to do our job. And I appreciate that. He's not just you will vote yes on this bill and no on this bill and yes on this bill. And I've seen some of that happen across the nation in other states. And so our governor has says, no, you're the legislators. You guys figure it out. When it comes to big issues, come talk to me and let me know where you're at. And if there's things that I can help, his door has always been open and communicating. I meet with him weekly, and I meet with his staff, feels like almost every day. And so it's hands-on, but it's also hands-off at the same time. He wants to let us do our jobs as legislators to really develop what is the best legislation for this state.
And you said that the conversations have been productive, and as much as I appreciate that word, it's not very specific. So I've got to ask,
Intentionally so.
where do you feel like, is there any room, where's the governor said that he's willing to negotiate on issues? Where is he planning to stand firm? Where does the landscape start right now with basically 20 days to go in session?
So I guess I'll start with answering the question. I agree with the speaker. I think an 8 or a 9, and I think to some of Member Hafen's point, at the beginning of session, there's a lot of bills. Some of those we are going to say we aren't going to do because there just aren't votes, right? There aren't votes in the committee, there aren't votes in each of the respective houses. Some of those bills end up in money committees because they cost dollars, and so we have to be able to make that assessment kind of after the fact. And so I think it would be a little strange to have sort of lines in the sand kind of drawn on pieces of legislation very early in the session. The governor and I have been having regular meetings, talking about a variety of different topics, bills that are coming from agencies, thoughts on that, bills that have different policy proposals. We have phone calls when there are questions about different pieces of legislation, and trying to just get feedback back and forth. I think right now we're in the process of trying to get from him and give to him what it is we think are the big important pieces that we would like to not only pass out of our respective houses, but also get a signature on. And what are the things that are really important for him in some of his policy bills, and understanding, and I've been very clear about this, that we need a 2/3 vote for the CIP bill from a budget perspective, right? Of the 5 budget bills, you need a 2/3 vote, which means we need a Republican to join with Democrats. I would appreciate, just for the record, that it's not just Democrats and 1 Republican. I hope that we can find some bipartisan consensus. I feel very hopeful about that, but I think we're at that point in session where we're getting to second committee passage and second House passage. Some of those deadlines are going to dictate what ends up getting sent over to him. And we are just receiving, I think, the last of his policy bills, so we still have to dig into those and figure out what it is that he really needs out of those bills, and ultimately come to a resolution at the same time that we're receiving the final budget bills from the Money Committee's work. And so this last period in session tends to be pretty critical with where things actually end up. So I think when the speaker says productive, it's that we're having communications. We're talking about things that, as a general notion, are things we're not going to do, or things that we would like to see passed, so we can kind of work on those ahead of time. But I don't think that at this point in session, there are final decisions being made about any of those things.
The governor indicated that he would draw a line in the sand for charter schools, for example, right? And we've talked about that a lot in the press. We've noted that, Republicans did not vote for the K-12 education increases because charter school... Some did. Some did, because, clarify this, some Republicans did not vote for the K-12 education increases because it did not include charter schools, charter school teachers. Now, there's been, you said this publicly multiple times, that when this comes forward, that is not off the table. It is still under consideration. There are conversations. It's about making sure that funding is adequate and there's checks and balances to it. Now, is there anything else that you guys have seen besides what we saw on the veto message on Twitter, or X now, that sort of indicated this is a line in the sand for him?
So I want to be very clear. First and foremost, the conversation about charter school raises being a line in the sand or a hard and fast rule was never a conversation that was had with me or in any of the meetings that I've been a part of with the speaker.
So you found out about it in the press release?
That's correct.
Now there was really?
Yes, there was a mention of charter school raises being something that the governor had as a priority in his State of the State, and we obviously saw it in the budget committees. But that was never, in any conversation that I had, something that was said, this is a line in the sand. We haven't had conversations about things that are a hard and fast no for him. So that was something that we learned from a press release. But I will say this, and I think the part that is maybe a little frustrating is that we've been very clear about the charter school raises on the front end, which is this. It was included in the budget, right, as part of the overall raises that we also did with SB 231 funds last legislative session. which last legislative session was $250 million given and allocated to school districts. If they come before IFC and say, we are going to give raises to teachers, we would like some matching funds from the state, we wanted to ensure that there were actually teacher raises that were going to be given to those teachers. And we wanted to see the accountability piece of that, which we talk about a lot, to say, did this help with vacancies? Did this help to retain teachers that were already in the profession who maybe were thinking about leaving? What are the effects of us continuing or doing additional investment for teachers and staff in our schools? And so we required all of that through IFC and through follow-up meetings with the school districts who have come and presented that information to us. I think one of the nice things about that is I know that when we were doing the 231 funds, there was a lot of conversation about whether or not it would actually help, whether or not we'd be able to do raises. We've heard from school districts that teachers and staff are receiving upwards of 20% raises, and every single school district that has come to us has said this has fundamentally helped with retaining teachers and with recruiting new teachers. So what we know is that it worked. And in Clark County in particular, it helped with English language learning, special education teachers, and teachers who were in those Title I hard to fill positions. What we know from that is that that funding works. What I think we have seen in the budget hearings with respect to charter school raises are two things. Number one, the money that came to us as a request in the governor's recommended budget allocated those dollars based on how many pupils were in the charter school authority, based upon, and it sort of equated it with being sort of equal to Washoe County School District, and so that then was the amount of money that was funded. But we didn't allocate those dollars on a per pupil basis. We allocated dollars to school districts based upon how many teachers and staff they were reporting to us that they had. And so I don't think that doing a per pupil amount is the same thing, right? We're not sending those dollars based on a per pupil amount, we're sending them based on how many staff you're giving raises to and how many teachers you're giving raises to. So that money is likely less than what was actually needed, and we've been trying to get some of those final figures. We got some figures from NDE in one of the work session meetings that we had, but they didn't include all of the charter school teachers. I have been very clear that this is something that I have been working on, that this is something that I've had many conversations with folks involved in the charter school piece, and I think that they should come and do the same thing that we've asked of the school districts, which is tell us how many people you're giving raises to, we'll give you funds, and then we want to hear, like, did that help with your vacancies? Did that help you to retain teachers? And if it did, then that's a good investment, and that includes accountability and includes transparency. And so we have legislation and language that we are working on that is very forthcoming to address just that. And like I said, I've been having those conversations since very early and even before session with respect to the charter school teacher raises.
Assembly Minority Leader, obviously you've spoken out about the need for these charter school raises. There have been some social media posts as well that I could reference. Specifically, you said that Democrats are lying to you, claiming Republicans voted to cut teacher pay. The truth is the Dems are playing games with teacher pay. Do you still stand by that? What are we missing here in this conversation?
So my quote in the press release is that there was $123.9 million in cuts from the general fund to the education fund. In addition to that, specifically, there was $38.1 million cut in teacher pay raises to charter school teachers. And I think that it's very important that was the motion. We didn't vote to cut teachers' pay raises. And I believe
you voted to cut it. If you don't have the $250 million to extend the existing teacher and educational staff pay raises in the budget, they're getting a pay cut. That wasn't just a no on, it was a no on everything that was in that education budget, everything. Special education, charter school funding. So, I mean, I disagree with that. I think the end result would have been a decrease in teacher pay, and I don't know how we walk away from that after giving $250 million.
we still have 3 more weeks through session.
I understand.
So, okay, since I'm so old, I've seen this movie before many, many times. And you are not going to hold up the entire session over charter school raises. And now you can now send out mailers into his district next time saying he voted against the education budget. That's great. We all know that's going to happen.
That might get him more votes.
But this is serious, though. I know all of you, and I will stipulate all of you care about getting the best education for kids. So you believe in universal pre-K. The governor thinks that charter school teachers should be treated very similarly. And if you have legislation coming that will address some of the financial, which I think are real, that you talked about, why are we going through all of this rhetorical exercise? Well, let me just finish.
Okay.
Let me just finish, because you talk a lot too, just like me. So
Yeah, it's fine.
I think people just are sick of the game playing and the war of press conferences on both sides, by the way, where you're both staking out your positions, and we know, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to hold up the session over charter school teacher raises if they're done right. What do you want in return? Do you want some kind of pathway to pre-K? What do you want the governor to give you on education? Give us some insight, damn it.
I didn't know, look, I'm going to start with, I didn't know that we were playing games of war over charter school teacher raises, because that was not a conversation that we had.
Well, what I'm saying is you're not going to hold up the entire session or the education budget over that issue.
Oh, but we didn't. Right? We voted for the education budget. And I think that that's where you're seeing a sense of frustration. We had conversations in the money committees multiple times about the dollars that were allocated to charter school teachers. We asked many questions during our committee hearings, which is the proper venue for that discussion to happen, where we were saying, how are you allocating this? Are there any methods where we're going to get some buy-in? During the work session, we talked about needing that accountability piece of it. During the vote in the subcommittee, we talked about that, and then to be faced with a number of committee members, including every member on the Senate side who is a Republican, voting against education funding, and then seeing some sort of line in the sand, if you will, drawn by the governor over social media is incredibly frustrating because he and I have had conversations where he has said, if there's pieces of legislation that are just moving in different vehicles than in my bills, or if there's things that I'm asking you that are important to me, and you have a different legislative vehicle, I'm fine with that. So we could have just had a conversation if that had ever come up in the discussion, but it never did. And so to somehow decide that we are just saying no to charter school raises when we have said the exact opposite on the record a number of times, and then to turn around and vote against education funding because somehow we're going to say we're going to hold up the education budget unless there's some charter school raises when we've said we're doing it, feels incredibly frustrating and incredibly unnecessary. We can have a conversation about this that makes a lot of sense. We can have a conversation about this that doesn't require us to issue these, mandates of what we're going to do or not going to do. And I think that the governor probably agrees. I know that he supports education funding, and I know that he doesn't want to be here in August when kids and teachers are looking at going back to school, not having an education budget funded.
So, do I still know how to set off a politician? I haven't lost my touch. Let me just ask one quick question, Tabitha, before you jump back in. It's of the speaker. I keep hearing the Senate Majority Leader talk about these conversations she's had with the governor. Do you ever talk to the governor? Do you guys not like each other?
So I don't mean to say just me. The speaker and I.
But I mean,
together
it's well known. I mean, you were upset. Him calling essentially the assembly this den of corruption during the campaign. There was a hangover from that, the culture of corruption. You still see it creep up in his PAC releases, which he somehow disavows any knowledge of, which cracks me up. But has that played a role in this? And if so, why?
Well, I was very defensive of the legislature. I thought that those attacks were an attack on the legislative institution in and of itself, and that's why they upset me. I mean, politics is one thing, but we're a co-equal branch of government, and I thought there was a lack of respect in the campaign cycle. But no, I mean, I'll tell you, the beginning of session, as the Senate Majority Leader said, it's a crazy time. We didn't have a lot of conversations with the governor, and I think a lot of that was just the budget. Like, the budget came to us in such bad shape. It took up a lot of bandwidth, a lot of time for us meeting with staff after hours. But no, I've been in on a number of the meetings. We have weekly meetings with the governor. I talk to him individually as well. So those conversations are good. And I think we're both at a good place where I think we looked at each other across the table and we just acknowledged that some things happened in the past that neither of us are very happy about, but it's time to move on. I mean, ultimately it's about the state. It's about getting things done for the state. So whatever hard feelings there might have been, I'm happy to say that I think those are behind us, and we can recreate new hard feelings in the next election cycle. And I'm sure we will, because that's the world that we live in. But no, I mean, just to your point, You can call me names, that's okay. I mean, that's part of the job, but I felt like it was an attack on the institution. And when you look at the executive branch power versus the legislative branch power, we are the weakest branch of government by far. We get 120 days to do our work. We work our asses off to get that work done. And I didn't appreciate what I thought was disrespect for the institution. And that's not just me, I mean, that's the entire institution. But no, we talk on a regular basis. So those meetings are happening. I think we have one scheduled tomorrow. So I think we're in a place where we need to be, right? Ultimately, we have to stand up and lead the state. We can't fall into these petty squabbles in politics. We've got to get it done, and I think we will get it done.
So I actually want to hear from the Republicans on this. Where does the governor stand on certain issues that we might not have heard about, right? Charter schools being one of them. But I'm not in the room where it happened, so I've got to ask you. I know that's what our audience wants too.
So obviously, everybody's seen the post on X and seen the press releases in the news. Privately, behind closed doors, there have been conversations. I'm sure he's having conversations with you of things that he's like, hey, I'd rather not see this, come forward. But again, like I stated earlier, he's giving us the ability to legislate, right? I meet with the speaker every week, and we go through the bills and we talk about, hey, these are the Republican legislative priorities, here are the Democrat priorities. Where can we get aligned and see eye to eye on, where can't we? And so it's been more of a, hey, you guys have your job to do. Here's a direction that I would like to see, whether it was through the State of the State, through his budget, or through the private conversations, to help guide us on the direction that this state is going to go.
But, I mean, ultimately the governor gets veto power, right? I mean, any bill that crosses his desk, he gets to sign or reject it, or he can also just let it go into law, but we've seen that is not his style. Is there, are you worried about legislation crossing his desk that you haven't heard from him about? Any of you? You're nodding your head, Assembly Speaker.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you asked, maybe didn't ask this question, but, one thing that I talked about a lot in the interim with the governor and his staff is it'd be nice to get feedback earlier in the process. I mean, it's hard to change bills now. We're 3 weeks out. We can do it, but it's hard and it looks bad because people criticize us for doing things at the end of session, right?
Why are you looking at me?
We get criticized for that, but some of that is like, I don't know, I've asked for that feedback. Like, we don't want bills to be vetoed. I can assure you, my members work hard on these things. It's tough to get a bill passed. There's a lot of time and energy put into those bills, and you don't want to see it get vetoed, so it would be nice to have a little bit more feedback. And look, if the answer is, I don't care what you do, I'm just going to veto this bill, then okay, we'll make a decision. Do we pass the bill or not? Because from our perspective, that policy might be important. And what the governor thinks isn't going to dictate what the legislature does, because we're our own branch of government and we answer to our constituents. But if there's a way we can change that bill or amend that bill to get a signature, 9 times out of 10 my members want to do that, but they can't do that if we don't get that feedback. So we've asked for that feedback on a number of pieces of legislation, particularly the ones that he vetoed last time. We've read the veto messages. I'm going to take them at face value and say that those are the actual reasons the bill was vetoed, and members have tried to make changes to accommodate it, but we're still in a position right now where there's a lot of legislation. I don't know what he's going to do. I anticipate I'll hear more about that in the next couple of weeks, but time is short, right? Staff has a lot of work to do, and so every amendment that we're asking to do at this point potentially jeopardizes other legislation that's being worked on. So I am worried about that. I mean, we want these things to be signed. We don't work for 120 days just, to have all that work go to the side and get vetoed. So we're trying to address those concerns.
If I could add to that, I got to commend the speaker, some of his members, because they've reached out. Shea Backus is a great example. One of her bills got vetoed last session. She approached me early on, I think it was actually before the legislative session, because she was passionate about the bill. She wanted to address the veto message. She wanted to work with me specifically to be able to help get that bill across the finish line. We have had meeting after meeting after meeting with the governor's team, with the stakeholders, with the municipalities that were opposed to the bill last session. And I genuinely believe that the amount of work that went into that is going to get that across the finish line, because, like the speaker said, we don't want the governor to veto the bills, right? The concept of the bill was great. We read the veto message. We understood where the problems were. We spent time addressing them, and then going to his staff and saying, hey guys, we understand the governor vetoed this last time. Here's where we're at now. We've gone to all the stakeholders. We've got everybody on board now. Are there any other tweaks that you guys see that we need? And so I think that's that is something that we have been working bipartisan. It's not all drag out knuckles, Joe Biden did this, Donald Trump did that. There are things that we cross the aisle, that we agree upon, that we want to see get across the finish line. And I always say it normally takes 2 cycles to get it right. Whether it's vetoed or the old joke of half the bills that we passed this session are screw-ups we made last session. It's very true. I see Ben Kiekefer over there sitting going, I'm glad I didn't screw this one up, but okay. That's just what we do.
If you guys need 2 cycles to do things right, maybe we need better people up there. What do you think?
I'll let the chief figure that out as a freshman. What do you think?
I'm in my first cycle, so I'll go from there.
He hasn't screwed anything up yet.
But, to that point, I have been pretty politically active over the years, and I did, following the shooting, we passed a lot of bills, right? Following the terrible shooting we had. We had 10 pieces of legislation that we brought forward, and we got them passed. And then one in particular just didn't do what we wanted it to do, right? We needed better access for victim services. And that's been addressed this time. So you don't even have to be in the legislature to kind of have this effect, right? I mean, you pass something, you think it's exactly what you need, and then in reality, in operations, it just doesn't live up to what you thought. And so I felt that already.
So you're all talking about it takes 2 sessions. Is reform needed of the legislative system? Do we need annual sessions?
Take an audience poll of that.
The lobbyists will all be for it, I'll tell you that.
I think we need less bills. Maybe we should start there.
I mean, I think it is problematic. I mean, I don't know if our voters are ever going to approve it, but I mean, 2-year budget cycle with the kind of environment we've been in the last 10 years, I think it would make some sense to maybe do an annual budget. That would make it a little easier for us. We wouldn't be in this 2-year window. And, since I've been there, this is my 5th regular session and 5 special sessions. Like, I don't know, that seems to be par for the course. So I think we could use an off-year session, probably a shorter budgeting session. But as you know, that'll ultimately be up to the voters. And, one concern that I have is I get frustrated because we don't meet a lot. We don't have a lot of power in this system. But also, if we start meeting annually, is it going to be harder for me to recruit good people? Because now you're not going to just be gone for 6 months. You're going to have to take another month or 2 off. And so that becomes a real concern just in the context of the conditions that we live in as legislators. So that concerns me as well. But we shouldn't budget every 2 years. It makes it really difficult.
Senator Steinbeck, I know you're new, but what are your thoughts on this? You've observed the process.
Yeah, so do we need reform? I don't know about that yet by any means. I think we need to manage our expectations somewhat, that we're addressing the problems of Nevada the very best that we possibly can. I mean, we all knocked on the same doors. We all talked to the same, many of the same constituents. You're not going to know what's their problem. It's the economy and how expensive things are right now, right? And we're trying to address that the best we can within the limitations of the legislature. It's education, right? It doesn't matter what else is going on in your life. If you have somebody that's sick or you're sick, you don't care about anything else. All you care about at that point in time is, can I get the medical access and get to the doctor and get well? And none of those other things matter. And so we've all heard those same things, and those are complex, big problems that if there were easy fixes, they would have done it long before I got here. They're just not easy fixes, and so you have to try to work within this system and make those adjustments and move forward. That's why we have the long-standing items in the Constitution and in the federal Constitution as well. And that's why we have the legislation that we have at this level. And that's why we have regulation at other levels, just so that we can make those adjustments.
Senator Canizaro, do you have anything to add?
I don't think I do, so.
Let me answer your question. Does the process need reform? You say you don't know. Trust me, I know it does. It needs a lot of reform, and so you can't blame leadership necessarily for some of the problems that exist within a 120-day session. But it's not like we didn't know on day one that the Democrats controlled the legislature, that you didn't have enough votes to override the governor's veto unless you got Hafen to push the wrong button or something, which wasn't going to happen. So I think normal people, and unfortunately there's too many abnormal people in this room who are cynical about the whole process already, but common sense will tell people, why in the world would you wait 100 days to start meeting seriously with the governor when you knew from day one? You knew from day one that if you wanted to get your priorities passed, whether it's housing or health care or education, that the governor was going to have to move a little bit and you were going to have to move a little. Because you and I were on a panel together, Senator, a few months ago, and I talked about if there's 75 vetoes, that's a failure of leadership on both sides of the courtyard. For you guys to just be communicating now about these major issues. His bills came in late. Yes, the major policy bills, that's an issue. But there's something really wrong if we're sitting here and you can't tell us, well, where we're going to go. And I'm not asking necessarily to negotiate with the governor in public. Well, yeah, I am. I mean, tell us what the minimum is that you need to come out of this session with and why it took so long to get there. Is that not a reasonable question?
Well, and I think that would be a reasonable question if we weren't looking at some of the other factors. And I think when we sat on that panel, I disagreed a bit with that because I pointed out that many of the bills that were vetoed were agency bills where there were little things. I don't like this particular mechanism in the bill. Those are the kinds of things that are fixed with an amendment. Those are the kinds of things that are fixed with a conversation.
Did you tell the governor that? Have you told him that?
Yes.
Are you confident that's not going to happen this session?
In fact, one of the very early meetings that we had, I said, here's a bunch of agency bills. I'm curious what your thoughts are on them. Do you have concerns? These are coming from your agencies, your executive agencies who are saying, hey, we need this change. Some of them are 2/3 bills. Some of them are bills that the agencies are coming and telling us we really need. And so if there's going to be an issue with these, I want to know ahead of time because these are early submitted bills, right? We know that there are some bills that are going to be pre-filed, that are going to be out there in the ether well before we get to a legislative session. And I think a couple of things. One, yes, I have had that conversation with him both prior to session and then in session about let's not have these bills get vetoed or not passed because there was something that we could have done in the legislative process to remedy the concern, right? And if they're agency bills, that is something that I think I don't have a good answer for. We hear an agency bill, the agency bill says it's great, it passes with bipartisan support, we send it over to the governor's office, we get a veto message. That's unnecessary. And I have told him as much. And we've tried to, I think, make it a lot of really good progress and having good communication about that going into this legislative session. I think, too, the other thing to keep in mind is that we also can't walk in as legislative leadership on day one of a legislative session and say, here are the bills that everyone is going to support, here are the bills that the governor is going to sign, and here are the bills that aren't going to make it. Because there's a whole deliberative process that takes place for us to not only view our own bills, right, in the first house, but then to get the other house's bills and decide whether or not we agree with some of the things that they have done, to make amendments, to discuss it with the various stakeholders that are out there. And so I think this idea that because we knew it was going to be 120 days for us not to have definitive answers today about what exactly it is the governor is going to sign, what exactly it is we are going to amend his bills to do, and what it is that our folks are going to support, I think ignores the legislative process. It ignores the deliberative process that we have to engage in, and especially because, as I mentioned initially, we are coming up against a second committee passage on Friday. So there's still bills that are being heard. I came from a bill hearing today on a bill that had to be heard by the Assembly Committee. And so I think it's our job to also make sure that we are doing all of those things along the way. And then two, it does take us a very long time in the budgeting process to have all the different hearings on the governor's recommended budget. We begin that with pre-session budget hearings 2 weeks before session starts. We have to go in and make decisions about how it is we are funding things. And there's a lot of bills. We had Finance Committee today. Chief brought a bill and we heard about it. We had bill hearings, to talk about whether fiscal notes were being removed, whether we thought we could manage the cost of whatever the policy was. And so that process has to also take place. We just closed our last budget last night, right? So I think to suggest that we should come into a session and just know what the end result is going to be ignores the job that we actually are doing along the way.
Can I make one point on that? I'll be quick. don't keep in mind too that a lot of this should happen in the interim, but we're not full-time. The governor is full-time, legislators are part-time, and at least in the assembly, what that looks like is a 120-day session. You get about a month off and you start campaigning in July. So you're campaigning for 18 months. So I don't know until we get to the November election who's coming back. I don't know who my new people are. We have people in leadership who are in very, very tight seats. And I just reference that because there's an imbalance of resources and ability. Like in an ideal world, we would figure that out like in the interim, but we just can't because we have our jobs, we have our families. If you're trying to run a caucus and a bunch of campaigns, I mean, that really does take it out of you. And I'm in a tight seat. I don't even know if I'm coming back. So like I've got to get through that. And I think there's just not a lot of time between in November. And then you have new folks, and as much as we ask, they don't always share with us what their bills are going to be. They're not required to do that. So sometimes we don't know until they put the bills in, what they are. So I think some of that just naturally has to happen. And then you get into deliberative process.
Two things, if I may.
Of course.
So, John, I think all four of us are going to agree here. We don't want to see vetoes. We don't want to see a record 75 vetoes again. We really want to work to get us to a place where we can all agree. That's a perfect world. I think we all can agree we don't live in a perfect world. And so here we are. But the other thing I want to mention, and I'll give you a little inside scoop, you'll be the first one to know, I'm not doing this alone. In my caucus, every single member is a key asset to our team in doing this process. I've got a number of my members here, I've got a number of my staff here. They go out of their way to ensure that before they go into a hearing or before they go into a work session, they get with the governor's staff, they get with the directors and the DHHS staff to go through the bills to make sure they're not missing something, because we're human. We miss things. And so what I will say is that, yes, last session, nobody was happy with 75 veto bills. But we have really tried to work hard during the interim to put into a structure coming into this session so we can be as efficient as humanly possible. And again, I'm going to give the Democrat Party a kudos.
Democratic Party.
What did I say?
Democrat Party. That's an old Republican trick.
Yeah, close enough.
Wait, he was going to say something nice.
I was going to compliment him and he cut me off. I mean, I think I should just stop. Steve, I'll give you the compliment later. No. I think that the Speaker and the Majority Leader have done an excellent job in running the floor, managing how that happens. You've been around this longer than I have. When have you seen a first House passage when we are done before 5 o'clock?
Well, congratulations on that. But the governor has, I think, signed 4 bills. You've got a few hundred
signed 4
to go. So I know Tabitha has some questions about housing, which is a really important policy. It's only 3 hours left, Speaker.
Yeah. Wow.
8 o'clock is where we're in.
I only see a few people sleeping.
I don't want Senator Cannizzaro to spend the entire evening being mad at me and saying that I'm wrong about stuff. So let me flip this a little bit on you, and let me ask you this, Assemblyman Hafen. There's this kind of feeling that all Republicans are just going to fall in line with what the governor wants, no matter what. Even if, I know, please don't tell him I said this, Ben, the governor might be wrong on something and that you disagree with him. So let me ask the question to you this way. Are there any John Steinbecks in your caucus? Are there any reasonable men or women in your caucus who might be willing to buck the governor?
What do you mean by buck the governor?
Well, what if there was a bill that someone likes in your caucus and they say, I think I can vote for this, but the governor's against it, that would actually vote for a bill like that? Or is it just, we're going to do whatever the governor wants?
I think you've already seen that. The beauty of our caucus, our team, is that we are independent thinking. We had the Death with Dignity bill. Is that?
The medical aid and dying, yeah.
Medical aid of dying. I believe 2 of my members voted in favor of that, even though the governor... 3 members voted for it? Thank you for correcting me, Steve. 3 of my members voted for it, but the governor has said that he plans on vetoing it. And so, we are independent thinking. We are going to do what we feel is the right thing to do. And the governor has every right to say, I still am going to veto it.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, we're a separate branch of government, right? We have to run policy that we think is good. The governor has a veto power. We can't change that. But I think we owe it to our constituents, right? And to some of the questions like, yeah, the governor said he's going to veto certain things. It doesn't mean we're not going to pass it. I mean, no less, we're not going to tell the governor, we don't like your bill, don't submit it. He's going to submit it. That's the way the process works.
Why would you send him a bill you know he's going to veto?
Because it's important to a member or a constituent. We think it's the right policy. You know.
But you can just say that. I'm sorry that the governor's decided that he doesn't support this.
And I'll say, like, you don't know he's going to veto it until he vetoes it, right? I mean, you don't know that, right? People have a change of heart sometimes. Maybe we can negotiate it. So, and it's important to our members. I mean, it's not just about us versus the governor. I think I have a responsibility as a speaker to empower my members to take care of their issues, to be able to answer to their constituents. And sometimes that answer has to be, I believe in this issue and we passed it and the governor disagreed. We'll try it again next time, you know. Governors change, legislators change, there's always opportunities, so I think there's value in doing that despite what the governor might say. I mean, he has the unqualified veto power, and that's the final say, unless we can get 28 and 14, which maybe we can. Stay tuned.
Wouldn't it be nice to be governor, Mr. Speaker?
No comment.
No comment. Go ahead, Deb.
So I wanted to move into some policy areas, and to start off with housing, we saw a resolution that passed urging Congress to release federal land for the development of more housing to alleviate the housing shortage. We'll get into some of this, but there's some consternation around whether that would actually help or hurt. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I do want to ask, where do you see agreement with the governor on other housing legislation, right? We've seen tenants' rights bills that you've really pushed for and advocated that were vetoed for various reasons. Do you think that we'll see any legislation that will help alleviate the housing shortage or alleviate renters' problems, because it's a pain point for people? I mean, we're seeing housing prices through the roof still, and everyone says it's going to come down, but it never does. So where is there overlap beyond that resolution, maybe?
I mean, I think there's a lot of shared values. I mean, you talk to anybody who has gone and talked to constituents in their district, and they know that housing is an issue. I think to your point, Tabitha, we hear it from people all the time, right? It's tough out there to buy a home as a first-time home buyer, to find something that works as a rental and not continue to have rental increases year over year that at times become untenable. I represent a large senior community. It's tough for them, right, because they're on a fixed income. These are very real problems that Nevadans are facing, and I think that the governor, at least in his state of the state, right, and we've seen a housing bill from him, seems to recognize that that is a significant issue. And so I think if we can start from having that shared value point, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I was encouraged by in the state of the state was that the governor did mention that corporate sales of housing, where out-of-state corporations are coming in and buying up a ton of housing, driving up the costs for Nevadans, and making it very hard to rent those homes or to buy them, I think is a shared goal. We had a piece of legislation last session that Senator Dina Neal is working on that we're hopeful to bring back, that we're hoping to address the concerns in the veto message, because I do think that there are these places where we can find agreement.
And, oh, sorry.
No, there's some really good things in the governor's housing bill. I mean, we've heard that in the assembly. I'm worried that those projects aren't going to happen because of the tariffs, but we're going to get some flexibility there for that money to be moved. And I think the answer has always been, you know, do we need more land? Yes, and what else? Because more land, I mean, more land's great, but that's not a house. That's not where someone can live. So I think you're seeing policies that we're passing about zoning, about accessory dwelling units being able to be built, because, you know, that has to be infill as well. The suburbs are great, but you've got to get infrastructure out there, and we know Las Vegas in particular is notoriously bad on public transportation. So that and the tenant protections, those are the conversations we're having with the governor, because, you know, if we can keep someone in their place, like, that's the number one solution, right? Because if they're not there, then they're going to be using services and that. So I think there is a lot of agreement there. I just am really worried that none of these affordable housing projects are going to pencil out in the climate that we're in now. And we asked that at the hearing, and I mentioned tariffs, and all the developers were sitting there, were nodding their heads like, yes, we can't make this pencil out. But I think the concepts in there are good, that the state should have a role coming in to help with some of that financing. So, you know, I think you'll see some agreement there, and we'll try to get some additional policies on housing and zoning and infill.
And Senator Steinbeck, and I'll get to you in a minute, but, you know, we've seen, and jumping back to that earlier, advocacy for more public lands, right? We've seen sort of a new study that showed that they can come with wildfire risk, it's harder for municipalities to build out infrastructure to support homes on the edge of cities. I mean, we're seeing shortages in local government budgets right now. I'm assuming from your perspective as firefighter chief, you've seen this on the ground, trying to get to homes on the edge of, the districts that you're serving. Is that a problem? Is that a concern?
Yeah, it's a concern, but it shouldn't stop us, right? I mean, we need to still go that direction of getting the additional lands available and then letting the market decide, right, where people want to live. And you see that right now, even in Clark County. We had a lot of communities that, and 10 in fact, where we had to have volunteer departments. And you wouldn't get the same, they're great volunteers, do a fantastic job, but you're not getting the same level of service, the same level of protection in some of the rural areas that you are in, closer into the town and in the urban setting. No matter where you go, if you're a little bit further away or a little further from a hospital, right, you're right. You gotta bring in sewer. You gotta bring in power. You gotta bring in water. You gotta build all that infrastructure. And there's a give and there's a take as you go out further away from the center of the municipality. And the services, you do have to learn how to budget those correctly. How are you gonna, if you have a flat budget, and you still have to give fire protection to a certain area, you're going to have to move resources to do that. And that's going to decrease services at some level. And that goes for law enforcement, that goes for every facet of government. But to your earlier question, I do believe also something that the governor would agree, and I think the panel would agree as well, is we got to also help our developers in getting stuff done faster through less regulation, right? And when I say that, and that's all the way across the board, that's not something that we can do just at the legislative, as a legislative body. That's local government, that's all the way through, but it takes a long time to get a project through right now, and I think that we can, and that costs more money. That adds cost to the project, and it decreases inventory. So I really think we need to look at ways that we can assist with that.
Senator Haven.
So I feel obligated under our joint standing rules to disclose that I operate a private regulated utility regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. I just want to be fully transparent here. So I understand the issues with the delays and how long things take. It can take 5 years to get through the permitting process, whether it's through the local municipalities or the state, and that takes too long. We have to do something to try to expedite that. And again, I'm one of them, right? I think in the governor's bill, he mentions that utilities have to come up with a plan to expedite the utilities approval processes. And I look forward to doing that. We try to, with our little small, actually I think the Lieutenant Governor called me a micro business. I'm no longer a small business, but micro. Made me feel real important there. But it's so important. We try to be lean, we try to be as efficient as we can. But we know we're in this housing crunch, and we have to be able to help build things. And if my family is out there listening, I'm going to apologize for not being home. As the speaker says, we all have day jobs, we all have families. My family's picking up the slack for me being here. We have had just an explosion of developers that want to come in and build the massive backbone infrastructure to help with this housing crunch that we're in. And they're picking up the slack, and I can't thank them enough for allowing me to come up here and serve the state. I know that it's been a burden on them, but at the same time, I think that we're going to do some really good things that ultimately are going to help the citizens. And again, I'm disclosing for the record.
Yes. Oh, but by the way, you did say something really important there. It surprised me. But I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We have joint standing rules?
I'm kidding. The bottom line is, and first of all, we have about 10 minutes left, so I want to get into some healthcare stuff and everything. First of all, I do want to thank you all again for taking an hour and a half to have a discussion like this at a time at crunch time. But people sometimes forget, including people in my business, that this is a sacrifice for people. Whether you're great legislators or not is not as relevant. In fact, that you're taking time away from your families, from your jobs to do a very thankless job often. And so I do think they all deserve a round of applause for the sacrifices legislators make. I think it's too often forgotten. So before I throw it back to Tabitha, because we should try to get some more specifics before we release them. Both of you were saying essentially that there are large parts of the governor's housing bill that you think will be processed this time. Okay. That's news.
The other piece that I have a question on is, obviously we talk about wildfires very quickly. Are there any discussions about wildfire liability when it comes to utility companies? And maybe you have to excuse yourself for this one. But
I'm going to abstain.
we've seen a number of other states implement legislation to cap liability or to address concerns about rampant wildfires that then bankrupt companies, right? Is that on the table?
Is that a surprise bill that's coming?
Is that a
what
surprise
she's
bill that's
asking.
coming? Yeah.
I think there's folks who are having those conversations, but I haven't seen any language and haven't seen a bill, so.
So give us odds on a film tax credit bill passing. Is it 80-20, 20-80? What do you think?
I think that there are a couple of things that I would just mention along the lines of film tax. First and foremost is, I think the question has always been, like, how does that financially pencil out for the state, right? If we are going to be giving tax credits, what does that mean? Is that something that we can afford? I don't know that question has really been answered just yet. And I think the other part of that is, is this something that the governor would even sign if it gets to his desk?
Have you asked him?
I think we have to know, like, whether this is something that
Have
he
you
would.
asked him?
I don't think that we are at a point of getting an answer on that. And honestly, I think if he is not going to publicly say, like, yes, this is something I support, and yes, this is something I would sign, or yes, this is what I want in this bill, it's tough to have those conversations, especially with there being two bills out there.
Is it more like an Allegiant Stadium or more like a Faraday? And I think that's the question for us, because Allegiant Stadium has been wildly successful, and I think it's, in any analysis, it's penciled out. So I think it's an intriguing opportunity, could be a generational opportunity, but we still have due diligence to do. It's got to make sense for the state.
What are the odds?
Don't know. Check Vegas.
To quickly change tones, budgets for the Nevada Health Authority have moved forward. Do you see that being implemented, or are there still issues with that?
So I think we actually just introduced that bill in Senate Finance today as a BDR, as a budget implementation bill, as we refer to them. It's over 400 pages because we're moving a lot of things within the NRS. So we're going to take some time to obviously take a look at that and hear that. I, for one, am someone who believes in the concept of being able to utilize the state's purchasing power to help bring down costs for Nevadans, especially when it comes to healthcare. And I have been a believer of that since at least 2019, when we started talking about the public option, because the whole premise behind that was, can the state utilize its own purchasing power to help buy down the costs of healthcare for Nevadans and for coverage? And we've seen that actually has come to fruition, and that there are proposals out there, and we're looking forward to sort of seeing that implemented. We know that it will work. And so I'm glad that we're acknowledging that, because a lot of the premise of the health authority is, if we can put all of these divisions together and we can utilize the state's purchasing power, we can help buy down the costs for Nevadans. And that is something that I have supported for a while, especially with the public option, and I think it's going to be a really promising venture for Nevada, and I'm glad that there are a lot of my colleagues who are now supporting that.
In Stacey Weeks, we trust.
Let me, of course, we can all applaud that. Let me just ask two Republicans, very simple question. Simple, yes or no. The Speaker has introduced a bill to cap the cost of insulin. You support that?
Well, it's more than a yes or no question.
No, it isn't. There is a bill that's been introduced. Will you support it?
I like the concept of the bill. I think it goes along with what we're seeing across the nation. I think the Speaker and I are going to try to meet later this week to actually talk about that.
So I kind of like it. Maybe I'll vote for it.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
We'll let you know how the conversation goes. Can we live stream it on
Yeah,
via X?
absolutely.
Just
Yes.
on your page?
Yes, you could.
Yeah, I absolutely want to support that. That's something.
See, that was some limit. I absolutely want to support that.
Yeah, I mean.
He didn't give you a yes.
I absolutely want to support it.
I don't want to say
You don't have
complete
say
yes,
more.
because then all of a sudden, and there's something in it there about firefighters have to clean the bottom floor of the legislature every day. Something crazy that I wasn't expecting. But on his face, of course, because we got a lot of people out there that are being pinched in a lot of different directions, and they got to have their insulin.
You know, the guy that you love in the White House is for, like, capping costs. So You saw that, right? So you
I
can
didn't want to
support
say
this.
that. I didn't want to say that the speaker's following or actually leading the way.
But
for
it's
President Trump's
legislation as
executive
opposed
order.
to an executive order. There's a big difference.
I have a quick
couple
yes or
more
no.
things. We got
yeah,
4
a quick
minutes.
yes or no question, and this has been proposed by Democrats, so actually Assembly Minority Leader. Democratic Assembly Member Selena LaRue Hatch has proposed a bill expanding paid family leave requirements. Is that something that your caucus or the governor has indicated support for?
I believe that Assembly Bill 112, which was Assemblymember Wynn's bill, actually was the bill that passed out of the Assembly. I think
she's talking about
No,
388.
I'm talking about the paid family leave measure.
It's in Ways and Means.
It's in Ways and Means right now, yeah.
It's in Ways and Means. We've got about we actually have about 200 bills in Ways and Means, 3 weeks left of session. I don't know where that's going.
That's a good process.
But what I would say is that Assemblymember Wynn had actually worked on a very similar measure to expand PTO for family to be able to use their PTO. And that was a bill that I did support. And I know he worked on an amendment on the Senate side. It will come back over, and I believe that most of my colleagues, if not all of them, will be supporting that now that it's been amended on the Senate side.
Is anything going to happen with opportunity scholarships this time? Are you guys saying no again to that?
Hopefully some reform of the reporting. I mean, I sat through a 14-hour IFC hearing that I'm still getting therapy for about how the program works. The program is broken. It incentivizes people to stand in line at the taxation department with tax forms. So I think you're going to see some reform there. In my mind, before we ever think about additional funding, there's got to be some changes to that program. It's a disservice the way that it runs. I don't know why it was set up like that. It shouldn't work that way.
If it was reformed, you could vote for it?
Maybe.
Maybe. That's a hard maybe. What about you?
There are not votes in the Senate caucus to expand opportunity scholarships. Has been true for a long time.
All right, are we heading up against our final question?
So
time?
let's.
We have
Yeah, you want to ask it, or you want me to? They'd rather have me, right?
Yes,
No,
of
I'm kidding.
course.
Go ahead.
Of course, John.
Yes.
I think our final question tonight is, what do you want the public to take away from this conversation? Or what do you want the public to be thinking about heading 2 weeks toward the end of session?
I think hopefully what you've heard is that there are a lot of really great folks who serve in legislative office who are trying to do the good work of the people who elected them, right? It's an honor to get elected by the folks in your district. And it's an honor to come up here and serve. As much as there are pieces of it, right, that are tough, it is an honor to get to do this job. Every day we get to walk into a building where you can do something good that can help or to change someone's life. That is weighty, but I think that it is also, there are very few places where you can actually do that, and I think that this job is exceedingly rewarding because you get to go out and do something good for someone. And I think that everyone who is sitting up here is trying to do that. The end of session is always a little tough because it does take time. I believe that it takes time to get to a point of consensus, to think about what bills are passing, to think about what it is we're ultimately going to do. And so I know it's hard when there's 20 days left and it feels like everything is moving at lightning speed and it's hard to understand what it is that we've all been working on. But there is a lot of good work and a lot of diligence that's being put forward by everyone here on this stage and all of our caucus members who I know we all believe in to make sure that we're trying to do the best for Nevadans.
So the job is so rewarding that you never want to leave it. You're going to be a legislator for life. Is that what you're saying?
You get termed out, so, you know.
Speaker?
I mean, I would just say we're your neighbors. We come from the community. I mean, we're not in some ivory tower. We have the same struggles that you have, and we know that we're living in incredibly uncertain times and unsettling times. I mean, every day it feels like whiplash with what's going on, and we're going to do our best to right the ship and make sure that we can get Nevada through whatever these next few years bring. So, we're working hard and reach out. We'd love to hear from constituents.
Senator?
Yeah, no, I would just like people to know that a lot of what's just been said now, that there is a lot of positive work that gets done. There really is. I mean, early in the session, I sat down with Nicole. She took time to go through all my bills with me. Steve just did this recently. We walked through and we talked through all of these different, when they got over to his time, they made time for that. I like that. That's nice, right? I mean, that's good. It is not, there is a lot of things being framed as though, you know, it's Thunderdome in there, right? And I know a lot of people out there are too young to understand what Thunderdome was. That is Thunderdome in there, and when the doors close, it's Mad Max, and we're all going after each other. And it's not, that is not the case. You know, they want the housing prices to be reasonable and medical access for everybody and good educations for everybody, just like we want that, right? There is no difference. And we just have some differences, and sometimes we have some differences in how we get there. Sometimes we have differences in which one is the priority, but most of the time, we just agree, most of the time, and that's underreported. And I think we should probably build on that a little.
Minority Leader.
Well, I'm just perplexed because I think Nicole and I definitely are too young to understand what he was just referring to. But no, I would, if we were in committee and I was testifying in support, I would say ditto. Because we all agree that there are certain issues that this state demands of us to work on and try to address. It's how do we get there? And that's where we're at the last 3 weeks. And what I would say to the people that are here tonight watching us at home is that we work for you. We don't work for ourselves. Technically, we don't even get paid right now. We're unpaid public servants here to do the job that you hired us to do. And if you're not happy with what we're doing, pick up the phone, call each and every single one of us. My cell phone's on my website. Email's probably a little bit easier than calling me on my cell phone because I'm in budget meetings
All the time.
all day, all night. And so, but shoot me an email. Let us know what we can do to help, because all four of us are here to serve you.
And his cell phone's on all our websites.
Yeah, mine too.
I was going to send you to him.
Call him.
I just want to wrap up first by saying that Senator Steinbeck's essentially saying that Nicole Cannizzaro is Tina Turner, which is a huge compliment, right? The Thunderdome, right? I mean, come on, so that's a huge compliment. I have to say, and I appreciate all of you coming tonight to listen to this, but as much as I appreciate all the support for the Indy and for this kind of conversation, I know better than anybody in this room how busy you are this time of session, and that each of you has taken an hour and a half plus the time it took you to get here to do this. We really appreciate it, even though you dodged a lot of questions and the speaker had some great rehearsed lines. We really appreciate it. I hope you appreciate it too, and give them a round of applause for coming. Lastly, I want to say the most rewarding part of starting this organization is watching young reporters like Tabitha just start out as just kind of this ill-formed, what am I doing here kind of person, to becoming a bureau chief and really getting the issues and really presenting a great face for the future of this organization. I'm super proud of her, and I hope you'll give her a round of applause. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you after the second special session. We really appreciate it.
That wasn't